This is the Nike swoosh, but did you know that Nike technically doesn't own it? It's all to do with tax. In 2020, Nike made a profit of close to $3 billion, yet they paid $0 in federal tax. What? Nike has been ducking and weaving around tax laws in order to keep as much of their profit as possible. And between 2018 and 2020, didn't pay a single dollar. In fact, they actually received close to $750 million in tax rebates. This is how Nike, thanks to a tiny island in the Atlantic, pays almost no taxes. Tax is like a game of cat and mouse. Businesses seek out loopholes to avoid as much as possible, while governments act to tighten those loopholes. This creates an endless chase that has been occurring for decades. But companies like Nike will never stop dodging corporate tax because there are billions of dollars on the line. So it's hard to pin down the universal tax strategies since these constantly change and evolve. But there are some strategies used today by Nike and in the recent past. Strategies that are baffling when you learn them, but are nonetheless legal. Between 2018 and 2020, Nike paid $0 in corporate tax, yet in the same years recorded astounding profits, like $2.9 billion in 2020. What? How has Nike avoided paying billions to the government when it continues to announce record revenue every year? Well, part of it comes down to the nature of business, specifically tax-deductible costs. Publicly listed companies are obligated to release financial reports, and typically want these to be as favorable as possible to appeal to shareholders. But what's interesting is that companies use a completely different reporting system for tax purposes. So expenditures or investments can be offset against profits in different ways, with, for example, different methods of depreciation, the way in which assets lose value as they get older. Let's say Nike invests in new shoe-making equipment that lasts 10 years. For shareholders, they might report this asset losing value in a linear line at 10% per year. But for the government, they could use accelerated depreciation to show that equipment loses value quicker at 30% in the first year, and then less and less in the subsequent years, which would yield a lower return on investment in that year, resulting in lower tax. As an illustration, between 2018 and 2021, Amazon generated $79 billion in revenue, yet the company paid a total of $4 billion in corporate income tax. The tax rate for Amazon should be 21%, but they paid a measly 5.1%. The expenditures reported publicly to shareholders and privately to the government were calculated in different ways. So according to Amazon, they did pay 21%, technically. This is how Nike can boast record profits and growth to investors and then say they made a loss to the federal government. Strange and nonsensical, but completely legal. But this is only part of the puzzle because companies don't always have new colossal investments to offset profits. But a saving grace for these companies comes in the form of tax credits. Governments want companies to improve societies, so they provide the option to offset costs by investing in certain areas. These can include research and development, improving products and manufacturing, or even just creating new jobs in certain states. How is this different from expenditures? Well, credits don't reduce a company's profits. Instead, they directly diminish the amount of tax they pay. This is to incentivize and reduce the barriers to innovation. So let's say Nike spent $50 million on experiments and scientific studies to make more comfortable shoes. They could apply this expenditure directly to their tax bill, reducing it by $50 million, regardless of profit and regardless of whether the experiment was a success or not. Nike could also carry some of those credits forward up to 20 years, which they might if their current annual tax is already low. But the real savings come from refundable credits. If a company's income tax reaches zero, any credits that are categorized as refundable, the company receives in full as rebates. Not only did Nike pay $0 in tax in 2020, but they actually received $109 million from the federal government in tax rebates. All of this from researching how to make better shoes or similar. But that number doesn't tell the full story. In the height of the pandemic, the US Senate passed the CARES Act. A necessary move to support the American economy, but one which inadvertently resulted in giant businesses getting gargantuan payouts. The act allowed companies to receive refunds on tax paid over the previous 2 years. This is how Nike avoided paying any tax in 2020 and received that enormous $109 million rebate from the government. But there's another tax avoidance strategy Nike uses, which is possibly the most lucrative. There's a practice employed by almost every one of America's giant corporations that saves them billions. This strategy is why Nike doesn't technically own many of its intellectual properties, like their logo. To really understand what's going on, we have to move outside the US, where the true tax strategies lie: offshoring. Offshoring simply means to establish a new part of a business in another country, often to sell goods to that market. But it also provides the benefit of weaving between tax laws. Companies engage in all kinds of offshoring, including Nike, establishing parent or subsidiary companies in tax havens like Ireland, the city-state of Monaco, Luxembourg, or Bermuda. Companies are incentivized to move profits ashore to these territories where the tax rates are incredibly low. Ireland's corporate tax rate is as low as 12.5%. Compared to the 21% in the United States, companies see offshoring as a no-brainer. Whenever Nike is forced to pay tax, it's as little as it can possibly be. But the shenanigans don't end there. Remember what I said about the Nike swoosh? Well, this involves a technique Nike has used to dodge even more corporate tax. You see, Nike doesn't own this logo. Nike does. Let me explain. Leaked documents revealed that Nike in the US and Europe licensed this iconic brand from another company called Nike International Limited, based in Bermuda, with zero staff. Thanks to a collection of rather confusing laws in the US, the Netherlands, and Bermuda, Nike is able to offshore billions in profits from the European markets under the guise of royalties to the company that owns the Nike swoosh, along with the other Nike trademarks. The flow of trademark royalties had helped Nike build a $6.6 billion pile of offshore profits by June 2014. This sum had been taxed at just 3% outside the United States, and because it remained offshore, it had yielded no US tax at all. All of this from complicated laws, some of which date back to the 1830s. Nike is no longer able to enact this licensing practice, but it saved them billions of dollars. But the question is, why? What benefit does a country get from having a low tax rate or leaving in these loopholes? Don't governments want more tax revenue? Well, it all comes down to a multifaceted practice in global economics, which we've seen time and time again after the rise of globalization: the race to the bottom. A company's stock price can plummet in an instant, so CEOs and executives have used strategies like offshoring for centuries. They also invest in safe haven assets, so that when something like inflation comes out of nowhere, or when interest rate hikes threaten to decimate the global economy, their fortunes are insulated from that volatility. And today's sponsor, Masterworks, is giving everyday investors unprecedented access to CEO's secret weapon: museum-grade fine art. Art is a luxury investment with a centuries-long track record of steady appreciation. As an asset class, it's outpaced the S&P 500's returns by 137% over the last 26 years. Masterworks gives you the chance to invest in offerings from artists like Picasso, Kaws, and Banksy without needing millions of dollars or plugged-in art market contacts. They handle the legwork, acquisition, and storage while you benefit from any potential returns. So far, Masterworks has acquired over 300 paintings and almost $1 billion in assets under management. Just weeks ago, they exited on a Cecily Brown piece for a 77% return. It was their 15th straight sale to deliver positive returns to their investors. Over 800,000 people have signed up, so there is a waitlist, but my subscribers can skip it and get started today. Just click the link in the description. Think of a race between competing companies to achieve the lowest costs possible by any means possible. Lower costs mean higher profit margins. This practice is why corporations will outsource manufacturing to countries with low labor costs and sometimes questionable labor laws. But it's not just limited to manufacturing, or even companies for that matter. Many countries engage in a race to the bottom to attract global businesses, offering low corporate tax rates and other incentives to allow companies to hold on to more of their profits, establishing laws and tax rates that don't make much sense when zoomed in on the country, but when zoomed out on the global economy, the logic is there. Some governments go to great extents, spending more on these initiatives than some public services. Nigeria, for one, annually spends $2.9 billion on tax incentives to attract companies. That's twice as much as it does on education, despite 6 million girls in the country not attending school. But this practice isn't limited to a few tax havens. It's affecting the world at large. Corporate tax rates have fallen from an average of 27.5% just 10 years ago to 23.6% today, and this process also shows signs of accelerating. Sacrificing the public good for beneficiaries like Nike, which eagerly transfers billions out of the United States or Europe to offshore territories with lower tax rates or strange loopholes. Offshoring profits to avoid paying tax is technically legal, but whether it's ethical is another question entirely. Is it ethical for companies to benefit from public services but pay as little as possible in return? Is it ethical to report record profits and turn around and report no taxable income? I don't think so. Companies should have the ability to enjoy growth, success, and profit, but not at the expense of everyone else. It creates an unfair advantage in the free market. We all have to contribute to society one way or another, and large companies shouldn't be exempt from this. There are ongoing efforts to reduce this tax avoidance, like making a flat international tax rate of 15%. But we've still got a long way to go. It seems like the game of cat and mouse will continue forever. Hopefully, we'll see some critical changes in the years to come. Nike is reporting lucrative profits, but the same can't be said for Twitter, or X as it's now called, as it is struggling to break even and Elon Musk has made massive overhauls. But is it paying off? We made a video answering this question, which you can watch right here. And don't forget to subscribe to Dollar Stories for more business documentaries.